this is getting resolved, I probably owe you an explanation and an apology for the extreme vagueness of the title of my presentation that was included in the program. And the thing is that my entire dissertation is about how the Polish collective memory of rescue has been shaped since the war till the present, and I just couldn't decide. There's so much to choose from, and also it is a topic that just keeps on giving. This is an example from last year. If you can see on the track, it says #respect us. During the Second World War, Poles saved over 100,000 Jews. So this is last publicity campaign from last year, put together by a Polish non-profit, but with funding from the Polish state. And these tracks were sent over Europe to advertise Polish contribution. Of course, the number is absurd, but really it is just meant to symbolize the multitude of Jews saved by Poles. And just a week ago, the Polish government announced Polish Ministry of Culture would donate to 22 million zloty to establish this new museum. John Paul II Memory and Identity Museum, which surprisingly will deal with both the Pope teachings and, again, 40,000 of Polish rescuers of Jews. And this museum is to be established under the leadership of Father Tadeusz Rydzyk, who is the ultra-conservative Catholic priest and also media mogul, business entrepreneur, and a notorious anti-Semite. And so I hope we'll hear more about Polish church agency and commemorating rescue after lunch. But for now, I decided to address one aspect of Polish current memory of rescue, which I believe is crucial, and this is the focus on Polish victimhood and the notion of sacrifice, which is manifested in a special place of honor that Polish collective memory gives to rescuers who were killed for helping Jews. And I will talk about the consequences that this focus on victimhood and sacrifice, in Polish it is the same word, just like in German. Ofiara, offer, means both victim and sacrifice. So I'll talk about consequences that this focus has on Polish Holocaust memory in general. Help to the Jews has always been present somehow in Polish public discourse. Pretty much every time there was an outburst of anti-Semitism, the rescue of Jews was brought up as a moral alibi. So during the war, after the Kielce pogrom in 1946, then again in March 1968 during the state anti-Semitic campaign, and again in early 2000s. This new surge of interest in rescue emerged. I think it's pretty clear that it was a direct reaction to revelations about Polish complicity in the Holocaust and the debate on Jedwabne, prompted by the publication of Jan Tomasz Gross's book, Neighbors. And once again, the topic of rescue was brought up to do one thing, and really one thing only, to fight allegations, real or imagined, of Polish anti-Semitism. And a couple years later, with the offensive of right-wing nationalistic populism, this defensive reaction, I would say, turned into full-on backlash. So today, commemoration of rescue is being used to suppress any discussions of Polish crimes against the Jews. It serves to defend the good name of Poland abroad, and internally to foster uncritical national pride among Poles. And in this narrative, Polish help to the Jews is presented as nationwide, widespread, almost never done for profit, and supported by the rescuers' local communities. And the historical research has shown that, in fact, it was quite the opposite. It was quite rare, it was often done for profit, and rescuers had to be afraid of their own neighbors. They're often betrayed by fellow Poles. Can I have the next slide, please? So in 2012, Polish National Bank issued this series of commemorative collectible coins dedicated to 3 Polish families that tried to rescue Jews. Among thousands of Polish cases recognized by Yad Vashem, these 3 particular families were selected. The Ulmas that we've already heard about, the Kowalskis, the same thing, and the Baranek family. Every story of rescue during the Holocaust was different, as we know, but these 3 stories are actually strikingly similar. So all of these families sheltered Jews in their own houses. They all lived in the countryside. All of them were betrayed, discovered, and killed by Germans together with the Jews they were hiding, but also together with their small children. And I agree that this remarkable resemblance between these 3 stories tells us to ignore the details of each case and really consider them as one story, which is the preferred narrative of Polish help to the Jews. And in this narrative, there is certain hierarchy of rescue, in which Poles who were killed are venerated over Poles who helped Jews and survived. And the focus is more on lives lost than on lives saved, I would say. The victimhood becomes the focus of the story of heroism. Can I have the next one, please? So among these 3 families, the first one to actually gain any publicity was the Kowalski family. And Dr. Wójcik already talked about yesterday about this documentary, the Kowalski story, which is from 2008. By strange coincidence or not, this is the same year that another book of Jan Tomasz Gross was published in Poland, Fear, and I think that was one of the clear responses to fear. So on the left you see the image that was discussed yesterday, the image of the burning house, in which Poles were burned by Germans for helping the Jews, which is a polemical response to the image of the burning barn from Liwawna. But I was also intrigued by the last scene of the movie, which you see on the right, in which descendants of the Kowalskis, one of the sons actually survived, managed to flee the execution. So the descendants, the next generation of the family, posed for this family photograph. And I think this scene clearly mirrors the convention from documentaries about Holocaust survivors, in which the last sequence would be devoted to the second, third generation, the triumph of the survivor over Hitler by way of having great-grandchildren. But in this case, of course, we have Polish family positioned as survivors of the Holocaust, while in fact we really don't learn much or anything at all about Jews who the Kowalskis were hiding. The next one, please. But in the end, it was actually the Ulma family that became an icon of Polish help to the Jews, alongside Iranas and Berenian Karski, which is a topic for a separate discussion. In 2003, the beatification process started in the Catholic Church. And I think the fact that Ulmas are being considered for sainthood was the main reason for making them an icon of Polish help, because it really provides this perfect opportunity for fusion of religious and nationalistic discourses, which has been a staple of Polish culture for a long time. And so, the next one please. In March 2016, the Ulma Family Museum in Krakow opened. As been mentioned before, I'm sure will be mentioned again during this conference. The local government hoped not for Hillary Clinton, but for Natalie Portman to open the museum. Because her family actually comes from the area, more or less. So she was not interested. But that was the only setback that this institution suffered. And in 2017, a new state national holiday was established in Poland, which is March 24th, the anniversary of the Ulma's death, and now this is the National Day of Remembrance of Poles rescuing Jews. So I think hopefully we can discuss later why the Polish government, instead of celebrating the European Day of the Righteous, March 6th, chose to establish their own holiday, but it's not a day off in Poland yet. The next one, please. And then a couple months after the museum opened, Pope Francis visited Poland and he went to Auschwitz, and in Birkenau he met with Polish rescuers. The priest from Krakow actually, together with the chief rabbi of Poland, led everyone in prayer, and then a group of Polish righteous shook hands with the Pope, and you can see in the biggest picture, you can see the previous Polish Prime Minister, and right next to her are those two girls dressed in white. Those are relatives of the Ulma family. One of them is holding the picture of the Ulma family. And so this meeting between Pope and rescuers that took place in Auschwitz really sealed the newly esteemed symbolical status given to righteous and Polish memorial culture, but it also put them at the very center of Polish Holocaust remembrance. And so now I would like to address the consequences this focus on rescue, that is framed as Christian sacrifice, has for Polish Holocaust memory in general. First of all, such framework, I would argue, allows focus on Poles as primary actors and primary victims. It perpetuates the common stereotype of Poles being actively defying the Nazis, and Jews being passive. And in most Polish representations of help, Jews are really devoid of any agency and serve merely as a prop in the story of Polish heroism. But even more importantly, I would say, help as Christian sacrifice, as a conscious sacrifice, gives Polish deaths symbolical significance that is simply not attainable to the Jews. Jewish death is random and therefore humiliating and degrading, while Poles can willingly give up their lives. Jews are murdered solely because who they are, and they cannot sacrifice their lives, they can only be killed. Polish death is also meaningful because it confirms their Christian identity, while Jewish death tells us nothing about their lives. And so, as a result, though Poles and Jews, in the Ulma case, for example, they were killed together, and seemingly they shared the same fate, their symbolic status today could not be more different. And I would argue that because of this sacrifice, Poles are being established not only as victims, but as the victims of the highest order. The next one. Yes, in consequence, it is a Polish death that constitutes a break, a rupture, and merits a name for the event. And so in Polish media, the crime in Krakow came to signify almost exclusively the murder of the Ulmas. Often the press doesn't even mention that 8 Jews, including a small girl, were murdered together with the Ulmas as well. And so, for example, here I have a poster for the official commemoration of the anniversary. In 2017, a year after the museum opened, and in this poster, yes, this poster invites us to the solemn commemoration of 73rd anniversary of the murder of the Ulma family. Nowhere in the poster or the Jews being killed mentioned, and none of the events actually, addressed the Jewish casualties. Didn't take place in the Jewish cemetery. They all took place in church actually, or in school named after the Ulma family. And so, can I have the next one, please? And so this is often the case. So this is a monument unveiled in 2013 in Kozłówek, which is a small village, and also in Podkarpacie, same area as Markowa, more or less. And this monument commemorates Poles killed for helping Jews. Again, Jews are not being mentioned at all on this monument, other than passive, collective, anonymous recipients of help. And another quite telling thing about this place is that after the war, the Polish bodies were exhumed, moved to the local Catholic cemetery. Polish victims and Jewish victims were buried in the local forest, where they remain until today, and the site is not marked either. Okay, so before I conclude, I want to shortly address related phenomena, namely the initiatives to commemorate people who helped ethnic Poles. So can I have the next slide? So for example, Ukrainians who assisted Poles during the massacres in Volhynia are often referred to as the righteous. These are the two books that use this term. I would argue this is a very, very special case of broadening the righteous category. I would say that this reference to the Holocaust terminology served to establish Poles as victims of genocide in their own right. The next one. Another part of this phenomenon is commemorating help to Polish refugees by other countries. Those are two monuments from Warsaw, unveiled in 2017 or 16. One commemorates the help to Polish refugees in India, the other one help to Polish refugees in Hungary. And the fact that many of these refugees were actually Polish Jews is backgrounded in this commemorations, and I think it's also quite interesting in the context of the Polish government strongly anti-refugee rhetoric and policy, and the Polish society as a whole anti-refugee sentiments. And the next slide. 2016, Polish Parliament established two new national awards, Eastern and Western Cross, that are going to be awarded to individuals who helped Poles. And also in 2017, the government founded the Solidarity and Baylor Institute, referred to as Polish Yad Vashem, and again tasked with commemorating individuals who assisted Poles at different times in history. Nobody was awarded yet any of this process. And so I want to conclude with some statistics. The public opinion surveys held from the 1990s showed that increasingly there's an increase in number of Poles who believe that Poles suffered more or equally to the Jews during the war, and at the same time there is an increase in the percentage of respondents who believe that many people, or most Poles, helped Jews. And I would claim that these two developments are connected and are in big part a result of state-sponsored, top-down politics of history. And so to conclude, the Spotlight of Rescue ostensibly commemorates the Holocaust, and as such is appropriate for the Western audience. It could be exported globally. It in fact it celebrates the Polish nation. And finally, grants Poles the first prize in the competition of suffering. The next one. Thank you.